Hello everyone, Prince Dabslot here, and I am talking today about part 3 of the God's Teeth campaign for Delta Green, White Teeth. This has by far been the most expansive part we've done, taking us a while to get through, but it's been fantastic. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume you've seen the other parts leading up to this, so I'm not going to rehash on a bunch of old information, but if you haven't, I encourage you to go watch those. This is where the real meat of a lot of God's Teeth lives. So without further ado, we're going to hop straight into it. First and foremost, I didn't deviate a ton from the book. If you got through part 1, The Long Years, and part 2, I fully have my faith in you that you can get through this. It's actually structured much more linear than my players thought it was. They viewed it as more of an open road trip when in reality it's kind of a straight line down south leading to the Florida swamps, but that's not a bad thing. I love having the illusion of a little more of that road trip nature than it actually is. Remember, they're grounded, so they cannot fly anywhere, so getting around should be difficult, and you should keep in mind all exhaustion rules for moving long distances between places if they want to stay up overnight and drive. I find that exhaustion is actually a great mechanic, and willpower is a great mechanic in this game, really encouraging your agents to push their luck in what they're going to do. So keep that in mind. I love willpower and exhaustion rules. It's worth reading up on, and it's worth giving the agents the option to become exhausted to perform more stuff. Because, hey, you can be like my agents and start using cocaine and drugs and stuff to keep off exhaustion and then becoming addicted to it. Such is the life of a great Delta Green agent. So, again, I didn't change that much about this part. It is excellently written. It is excellently set up. I have faith in you to go through it, but I did change a few minor things and ad-lib some stuff as usual, so I'm just going to walk through that, and we're going to be following the book in order, so if you have the book at home, you can follow along and understand what I'm talking about. So as always, I made a DM screen for myself, have it on the back of all my sheets, and this is just to show that if I can consume the information and regurgitate it back out onto a screen, I understand it. So most of it is just stat blocks. Because I hate flipping through back to the page and then all the way back for stat blocks. So super easy, along with the bolo contacts, stat blocks, what the two spells did. So I could read these in combat and understand what's going on. I even had a little thing here for the questions they could have asked her and her answers, along with street legends, sources, and basically any chart the game gives me, along with the X-Dean investigates. And additionally, I had a big old red sticky note that said bad attack every session, because that was a very, very funny aspect of this scenario. It was honestly some of the most fun I've ever had in GMing or even TTRPGing, was just the humor in coming up with these bad attacks. And obviously, it's not a funny moment. It's a rabid bat freaking out, coming down from the heavens and snapping its spine and all that. But my God, it will be funny. It will be so funny. When every road trip, I'm like, okay, you're gonna stop and you're gonna use the bathroom. I'm going to take an umbrella, and he's like walking around with an umbrella to try and keep this bat out, and nothing he can do can prevent it. And it's without meaning to be. It's some of the funniest stuff you could do, and it's a great moment of levity to introduce to your games, because, man, this is a dark and dour campaign. This sucks. They're always constantly getting disorders, breaking down, killing kids, horrible things going on. So that little moment of levity, I think, just keeps us going, and that's what you're looking for, just stuff like that to keep you going. But don't be afraid to just make it be hilarious when this bat comes down session after session after session. Hey, because guess what? It's free dodge rolls. It's basically Bass training them in a fucking dojo to become the best dodger they can be. So it's not a bad thing. All the cool dreams of the speaker, I got impatient and I didn't wait for home scenes. I just gave them while they were, on the road, stopping in hotels to sleep, stopping in motels to sleep, stuff like that. That's where I inserted a lot of these, and I even came up with some of my own great moments here. Continuing on the theme of them being grounded and needing frequent check-ins with Tony, that leads me to some of my opinions on Tony, and that is that, yes, Tony is a hard ass, and Tony is tough to work with, but he's also trying his best to get them out of this situation. He is the thing that's standing between them and just getting thrown to the wolves like the program director wanted. He should be somewhat sympathetic so your agents aren't just saying, screw Tony. It became a running joke to say, screw Tony, this is all his fault, but it was always done kind of in jest with my group. So keep that in mind. Another thing is that I had Tony, that he gave them a laptop to use with a secure VPN so they could look up stuff with some FBI database stuff. And again, he gave them a vehicle to use. both of which are bugged for audio recording. So my agents didn't figure this out, but it's going to be a good shock when one of them will die and we'll bring in another one as like the sleeper agent, and he'll hear the recordings of them talking in the car about what they're going to do and their powers and stuff like that, and them being teeth and all that. So I think it's a great job of showing just how invasive the program is, where even if they don't tell Tony stuff, which I had one agent start to tell Tony stuff where the other two stepped in and were like, do not tell the program about all the weird shit that's been happening. Do not tell them. They will kill us, which is a good tip. But I like having the idea of them already being audio recorded, whether they like it or not. Yeah, it might feel a little futile, but that's the life of being a program agent, baby. Continuing on to the rest home. This should be their first stop along the way. Really cool set piece. I liked the tidbit about the song and looking at a player's eyes and making them know that they know it, because one of my agents in real life had actually just talked about that live version of the song with his dad. So a super weird coincidence, if you can say such things are coincidences in the eyes of Bast. Definitely keep that moment in. I was hemming hawing because, yeah, maybe I'm too zoomer to understand the music reference or what it's really talking about, but someone at my table did, and it gave me a great agent to laser in on. So basically, as soon as you drop the song, keep it out for which agent either looks the weirdest out or anyone that shows any recognition, and blast them with it. So continuing on about the fight, however, I gave them a POW roll to try and blast the dogs, which I preempted earlier in part 1 with the first dog. So really cool moment, and it allowed them to POW the dogs and get them to stop. And remember that Ellie Gable, you don't need to roll for her stabbing. I did anyway, but she gets a plus 20% or whatever because he's on the ground and not moving, and she stabbed him perfectly. Didn't end up saving Franklin Price. But definitely keep the POW rolls in, and definitely keep that song in. And there's actually a whole playlist if you own the Delta Green God's Teeth Evidence Kit. It's like a hidden link inside the PDF that takes you to a YouTube page that has these songs played on repeat. So definitely use that because it's good, creepy, old people home music. So this section also assumes that your players are going to be killing Ellie Gable at that moment. And my players didn't. They actually kidnapped her and dragged her around like a little deranged lapdog. And they did eventually kill her in a very dark and bleak moment after they got what they needed from her and confirming she didn't know anything and just making sure she didn't speak or anything like that or wasn't able to recognize them later. But you should encourage your agents to eliminate these quiet children, as they're called, and have Tony press that as well, because you're theoretically at some later date, if they ever learn to talk, they could easily identify your agents and what they're doing, and even way back in the day. So you need to impress upon your agents that, yeah, you can capture them and lock them up and do what you need to do to them, but Tony as well should be encouraged. You need to get rid of these people. They are a liability. I mean, they're murderers, so you have more than enough, leeway to go get rid of them. But it was a fun moment with my agents dragging her around for a while before realizing, no, we just got to get rid of her. We got to get rid of her now. So they faked a drug OD and dumped her in an alley somewhere to be found later by Velazquez. Continuing on about the children's home, this King's Children's Refuge, my players actually found a lot of this information about in part 2, given that it says with the top blurb above this that a lot of this can be found online to, avoid any fake details or misleading any people that are going to go there. So this is more of a follow-up. They actually made an appointment earlier and knew that Nikita was there for them to find. Again, a pretty straightforward moment. You get a really fun moment of rolling on that table to see how many questions they get out. And this would be a moment to stop your agents, and maybe even out of character, encourage them to think, hey, she's a real person. She's not a deranged psychopath. She's not following really vast orders. What questions do you want to have ready for her? Because a lot of times it'd be the issue where my agents would run into a situation to go interview someone, much like they did it with the reporter Toomley or whatever in part 2, and they're like, oh wait, I haven't actually thought through what my game plan is here or what questions I want to ask her if we do get to ask her questions. So as just a friendly GM to player conversation, I would even encourage your agents to be, hey, what questions do you want to have for her? If you could think up some questions and even jot them down right now, so you're not just saying they're slack-jawed. Because there's plenty of moments when agents are like, damn, I wish I would have asked her this, or dang, I wish I would have done this. And just encouraging them early to take those, half a minute to sit down and be like, what do we want to ask? We want to ask about the fact they're all operating by coincidences, what's going on, where they come from, blah, blah, blah. And that can really just be a good habit to encourage when encroaching NPCs that often, have other goals, or they maybe don't want to be careful about what they reveal to. Can definitely make your gameplay experience a lot smoother if your players are taking that 30 seconds to just think through what they want to do before they encroach the scene. This was one of the best moments of part 3, and just the idea that the enemies, it's a bear. It makes you realize that in all your time of playing on the Delta Green, there's not a ton of just raw animal attacks. There's stats for it and some other stuff, but this was truly a great moment for realizing, oh crap, it doesn't need to be some horrific demon sludge monster, some Migo from the stars to fuck us up. It can just be a bear. A bear is just violent and deadly. So, fantastic moment. I have my usual slideshow of pictures clicking through in the background, so this was a great one to snap to this bear rushing them down from the park, and this was also preempted by several things. One of which was I gave them the bear handout of the survival guide in part 2, as I said in my previous video. I'll show it again. Yeah, so I gave them this in between their home scenes, and it was isolated by LaLonde on the God's Teeth Handler Discord server. She's a great handler, full of great advice, very friendly to talk to, so if you have any questions, that Discord server is a great place to get some good people to come in and help answer your questions and figure stuff out. But she isolated this, and it's a fantastic little document, and it made my players very paranoid about a bear attack all the way through. I believe it's found a lot of it in the back of the book and just a random mishmash collage. But this was thrilling to have pay off. Additionally, someone also made this. It's imagine your head, just tilt your head 90 degrees for me, please. And it's of the playground. So I had this in the back as they were approaching her, and I showed this on the ground to kind of hint towards the bear upcoming, and none of them got it until all of a sudden it, jump scared them with the bear picture, and they were like, oh, maybe we should be more keyed into what exactly being presented of us and the weird coincidences that are snapping to us. So this was a great jump scare moment to snap to the bear. So I also made Nika be very helpful, because when the bear attacked, one of my agents actually chose to help her kind of corral the children inside, while the other two kind of tried to take attention away from her with the bear coming in. And she really appreciated that. It matches her character that she cares a lot about these kids. And if your agent even takes the time in the middle of a combat to not just pull a weapon and start shooting and be like, no, I want to help save these kids, that's going to make her extremely helpful. And so she actually helped them cover up the murder of this guy inside the farmhouse. I had him, or not farmhouse, but the king house, and I actually had the guy turn around and enter the front door and kill the front desk worker that they talked to coming in, which is someone I invented. He just stabbed her throat, leaving her as the one adult there. So she was able to kind of cover the involvement, and they kind of hit it all as this massive bear attack. And so yeah, definitely keep that in mind that she wants to protect these kids. She is a kid-focused caretaker, so if your agents show any assistance in that, I would have her be extremely helpful and give out the details. Additionally, it was a little bit of an awkward moment when she was talking about the person that, this person named Conrad, and that connected them, and they were like, oh, well, clearly that's the kid, why didn't you do anything, blah, blah. I just kind of had her pretend to not understand or not figure that was the same person as Conrad, even though it seemed like a little bit of a thing that she would notice. So it's up to you how you want to play that. I had her not really bring it up and kind of increasing that embarrassment of having someone else write your PhD thesis for you. Additionally, because my players weren't really keyed in as much as I thought they should have been about them being teeth and their whole, where they exist in the whole vast ecosystem, of course, and that was kind of evident by their reaction to the printer scene in the previous part and not getting all the information I thought they should have gotten from it. So I had her be a little more keyed in to what was going on than she's perhaps written in the text. And that was just personal because of my game and the way that I wanted to, hit the agents with the sledgehammer over the head about what's going on. I had her quote this. This is a great quote in the back of the appendix at page 256, and I had her give this quote, which is a great way to just hammer in that they are on a path. They don't have a choice. Suicide's the only choice that matters. So this was the big light bulb moment that they had about what was going on, and it was worth it. the death of Crystal is pretty straightforward. Your agent is just going to be investigating a trailer park, so I don't really feel the need to expand on that much further. I ran that as the book. There's some great stuff in there for you to have a whole investigation of this crime scene and the police force. Nothing's going to jump out and surprise you during it, so I believe in you. Now, Eckstein was great. One of my agents is, Shadow Wizard Money Gang, casting spells constantly, which is very bad, and he will very soon learn all the consequences of casting all the spells he found in the Babushka's cabin in part 1. He's going to start to stink. His sanity is insanely spiraling, so he's not doing great. His other agents are suspicious of him casting spells. So my agent handled Eckstein in a way that probably a lot of other agents aren't, where he just cast the Stolnitzin's trick or the thing to make him forget about his investigations and basically just mind blasted him so he wasn't a problem, which in a way he's kind of a useful idiot, to have your agents become a part of and bring into the fold and even lead into the final fight in the swamps. But yeah, that's what my agents did to him. It kind of removed him from the picture entirely, which it's, he's really a complication for you. When you're looking at how Eckstein acts, if your agents are lollygagging, he's going to start reaching out, which I did. He's going to start coming in and texting people and trying to figure out what's going on and increasing his investigation. He's bitter about being fired. He's actually a really, really good character. And I enjoyed even a little bit playing with him. I was kind of sad I didn't get to play as more of a QAnon, not running into it. But I kind of had some of that bleed into the other NPCs that they meet. Another thing is the insurance. Have that be pretty open to them as a toolkit to do what they want. My agents didn't end up using the insurance, they didn't end up using it in insurance against Eckstein. Instead, they just took it for themselves, using all the cocaine to stave off exhaustion, becoming addicted to it, of course, when they did it for days in a row to stay up. And additionally, they used the weapons in the final fight against in the basement of the house and against the Gators, which ended up being extremely in their favor. So definitely be upfront about the evidence and the fact that they can do whatever the fuck they want to do with it, which I believe is almost explicitly what Tony says, is just do what you want with it. It's here as a tool. And your agent should want to take it. It is heavy firearms, but given that's unregistered firearms, this is a great time to put some police pressure on them. Maybe if they're driving around being stupid, let them know that, hey, if you get caught with these weapons, you're going to jail for like the rest of your life. You're getting caught with a bunch of unregistered M249 light machine guns, sawed-off shotguns, like maybe not rest of your life, but it's not looking good. And especially with your program association and the shit you're currently in, you need to be very careful. And it's worth encouraging your agents to have that extra layer of like, okay, where are we going to hide it? We're going to hide it in the car. We're not going to take it in the hotel rooms with us. Where do we want to do with it? And it's just keeping up that level of paranoia with their weapons that they use. Brings me on to my next point. And this was talked about with Vince from the God's Teeth Discord server about using their service weapons. I didn't really think much because I'm not a huge gun guy about like what their firearms and stuff are going to be associated with, which is what I struggled with. And honestly, if they're using their service weapons, make sure to either have Pizzarelli, fire home that they use their service weapons. They got to dump them at the end of this. Like, they don't need their service weapons floating out with shells and everything being associated with it that could potentially lead back to them. They need to dump it, and then that gives you great leverage to do during your home scenes as far as like, their organization that they work for, whether the post office or FBI or whatever, is going to be, hey, what happened to your weapon? And them having to kind of craft this around and the tension at work and possibly even some bond damagement. Good stuff right there. That's all just tools for you to work with. Just so you are aware, when your agents have this information about, the language that they hear, they can repeat phonetically, there is a good handout in the very back of the book about what the writer said, and them handing it off to someone working. It popped out at me when I was looking through the book, but this is the exact handout I gave them, and the exact handout I used when they went to go investigate this. They already knew a Egyptian speaker from their previous home scenes about digging into the history of Bast, so that wasn't the tough part, was finding the speaker. But just so you're aware, it is page 264, and it is a good handout just to deliver. Continuing on in this chapter, this is a good point to have your agent's jobs and bonds kick in. At this point, they've probably been gone for a week or two, or even longer, depending on how long your other stuff takes, and people are going to get suspicious. It's, where's my husband, where's my wife, where's my dad, where's my whatever. Where's my employee? All these things. So it doesn't really bring it up in the book. And it was something that I didn't really think about or keep into my head, especially doing the weekly sessions in between. And it feels short. But in reality, you go missing and you're like one of my characters is an EMT and they just haven't shown up for work in 2 weeks. And now is a great time to have bonds start breathing down their neck and really feel that pressure of, oh man, we're in the shit and we can't talk about what we're going to do. And we really have to lie to all our friends and family about what's going on. I have kids looking for me. I have wives. And going forward, I let my agents know that I gave them freebie at first when I had their bonds call in. But a lot of the bond communication stuff is on your agents. Like, yeah, you have a lot to handle as a handler. Like, not to pat myself on the head too hard, but you're handling with a lot. You got a lot of clues floating around. You got a lot of stuff to prep. You're a better handler than I if you remember every single bond of your agents and exactly what they're going for. So I let them know that going forward, they need to be checking in with their bonds. If I have to stop and think, hey, how long has it been? Have they checked in with their bonds? No, they haven't. Then maybe it's going to be some charisma ×5 roll or some roll like that to see how well their bonds handle it and if there's any punishment there. But they should be thinking about calling in, presenting their excuses early, making excuses to their wife, and that can feed in well to the home scenes. Just something to keep in mind that at this point, people are going to start looking for them. People are going to start wondering, where the hell are you? And additionally have Tony be breathing down their necks, expecting phone calls, expecting updates. And speaking of Tony, he is going to try and isolate, in my opinion, what he would do as a Delta Green handler is he would be trying to isolate an agent, call them alone and get them to tell them about all the spooky and weird shit that's going on and maybe their powers and their bloodlust and their weird prayers and all that stuff. Because, a smart player is going to be like, we need to keep our handler like a fungus, feed him shit and keep him in the dark, which is probably a good thing to do. It's the correct course of action. But you need to find your weak link. You need to find your player who's maybe doesn't think it's that weird or maybe thinks the program's still there to help them, and you need to squeeze them for as much information as you can because it'll make the next when they bring in the mole and the complications so much better narratively. So I would even take them to a room and talk to them privately, and if they all get on the same page and think, oh, we can't tell Tony anything, then that's good team composition and that's good teamwork. But otherwise you're going to try and create that schism of where the program knows what's going on, but because the program, when they know what's going on, so juicy narratively. So again, pick an agent, bully them, keep them alone, try and make them hand over as much juicy, sweet information as they can. And remember, with their car and laptop being bugged in my game, it kind of increases that narrative tension of the program knows there's stuff they're not telling. The program is ready to kill these people if they fuck around too much or they prove that they're not useful or they're too much of a loose cannon or too supernatural, whatever you want to do. Because that is great narrative tension. So it was kind of around this point that they realized what their call ability was. It's very hard for them to figure out. The book kind of implies that the agents will be using these powers even though they're not really aware of them. So it's a little hard to say they're going to be using these powers. You're kind of just doing it for them, I found as I ran through it. And as my agent gets lower and lower in SAN, when he hits 0, which should be within the next few sessions or 2, given how much he's spiraling, I plan to just pull him aside and tell him, you can pray to Bastard if you want, you can smell it, here's how to do it, give him all the details. But until then, especially with the call, I had them each privately write down in my notebook their thought, whether that be a prayer or just some sort of thought about what's going on, how are we going to handle this, what questions do I have for Bast. And this is because I didn't feel like they got a great time to answer the questions inside the previous thing. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, so I don't know if the camera's going to show it. But yeah, they just wrote down all their prayers right here. For example, Tala wondered, WTF is going on? I've heard many mentionings of you recently. Now is that tongue thing, those kids, the animals, it's all so much. And someone just asked, is Clove dead? And, and what happened with Clove, I think is the next one. What was Clove doing here? And so that's a great way to have your players secretly write down what they're thinking, and then you can arrange that into their dreams and their prayers and their visions and their all that stuff like that, all their seizures that they're having, because it's great to have something feel like it's actually answering them exactly, not just some generic, oh, here's what's going on, but something is it knows them and knows their thoughts and is coming to help them. And that is why one of my agents is convinced he is God's greatest soldier and he is ready to go down with the ship, swing in for Bast. So That's what I would do with a lot of that prayer stuff. When it comes to all these street legends, which should be the next stop, I am a lazy handler, and there are better handlers out there than I that will take everything that these kids are saying and that the adults are saying and translating it into their own words and verbosity and then spitting it back out. I'm lazy. I read this directly from the book, pretty much what they said when it said, oh, the adults say, children say, well, yada, 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 your father says, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I don't think it was any worse of it. Yes, again, I'm lazy. You can probably do better than me. But at the same time, it was great because, man, this is complex. This is not only the religiousness of Bast coming through and the cult of Bast coming through, but through so many different lenses of like a Christianity lens and so many other things. And a lot of it's incorrect, quote unquote incorrect in just perspective, because Bast is everything. Like, Bast is all. It doesn't matter that there's all, the red mother and the red-minded man and all the things like that. Like, Bast is everything. So either way, I felt like it was better for me just to like break it down and just give them the information, the most concise chunks that they could need. They took great notes on it, and I mean, they're following this religion hardcore. Like, it's really intriguing stuff. So, if you want to be lazy like me, read it from the book. I don't think it's going to hurt you a ton, but you could absolutely change this and put this in your own words as the book recommends. The fight was pretty great. The fight was really cool. Great moment with him casting spells and realize, oh man, getting hit with spells sucks. It sucks. And this could be a very deadly fight if your agents don't break out of that POW. But additionally, she's not really planning to kill them. She's just kind of playing with them and carving them up. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing to note, and this is an important spellcasting rule for your games that's not called out here, it's in the handler's guide, hidden in the line of text. That is that you can always pay 1 POW for 10 points of willpower when casting a spell, which I had her do when she was casting the mass, spell to have everyone, be sent back to the cornucopia house or whatever. So do that, because then that makes her POW rolls worth, and it keeps her willpower high for healing, because, that's a lot of willpower she's spending otherwise. So keep that in mind. Now, I think it's only for as a spell's cost, so she can't do it to keep respending stuff, but it's a good rule to have, and a good rule to keep in mind, and a good rule for your agents when they need all that willpower if they're going to be casting these spells, which mine are. Poor Philly Phil. Great character. You want to emphasize with Philly Phil, like, how dark it is, like, why he was using his powers for. I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube's going to censor me for talking about it anyway, but, him using it to send his Johns that he's hiring back to watch what happened to him as a kid in these brutal moments, that is extremely dark and sympathetic. I mean, yeah, he's a witch and he stinks of sorcery and it's overwhelming, but it shouldn't just be, oh, he's one of the quiet children, let's kill him on sight. Oh, he's casting spells, let's kill him on sight. It should be sad. It should be sad that this kid is, the mouthpiece for all these quiet kids is using his spells, just to score money and stay alive and in the tough homeless world that he lives in. Like, he should be one of the most sympathetic characters. And if your agents are hanging around him, which mine did, and failed their roles to keep their shit together and ended up just like murdering him out of sheer, Bastian rage, should be dark. Should be dark. So don't be afraid to tell them his backstory explicitly and tell them a lot of details going on. He also, when they asked him about the Gators, he told them where the Gators were, how they could find it, and that set them down the path to the final confrontation. But this is this might be one of, surprisingly, the bleakest moments in the campaign of just what this kid's been doing and having to survive. So don't be afraid to play that up. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the finale of this and kind of leading into it. So my players leading into this finale still had some hanging plot threads in terms of what to do about Velasquez, because she was still trying to access the Cornucopia House children file. She still had her conspiracy, the correct conspiracy that her previous police officers that she was working with were working on. The mage just kind of left and fled, along with Toomley, the reporter, kind of working her own back angle. So don't be afraid to drag those elements back from part 2 forward into part 3 if your agents leave it hanging. Not that they should, if they handle it in part 2, then it's handled. But my agents didn't. And don't be afraid to have that be the pressure and to bring it forward. So they ended up bringing Velasquez down here and, of course, used horrific magic on her. And they just killed the reporter, actually. Just shot her in the head and buried out here. Which was a good way of funneling them when they were looking for somewhere to bury, to kill and bury this reporter out towards the Everglades Parkway to Alligator Alley. And myself and some of my other players are from Florida, so we're very knowledgeable about the area. So that kind of was a cool moment too to add in there as well. I don't think this map is particularly accurate if you're looking for somewhere totally hidden. I even had it down some further back roads. Not that it's not swampy and gross around here anyway. But yeah, so that was something to do, is to drag these complications forward if they left them hanging. Your agent shouldn't be running around leaving reporters, following up on their leads or leaving the head police officer trying to figure out what's going on. That is great pressure to increase and have them resolve it before they face these kids. Because once they face the kids and do everything, they're just going to want to, close the book on part 3 and we're going to move on. So do that before you have this final confrontation. Now on the finale, this finale was a lot less lethal than I thought in terms of the armor and health. Reading it, I was like, oh my goodness, they're all going to die. And honestly, I was thrilled. I am thrilled to kill my players as long as it's fair and, feels like it's earned. And I would love to do the sleeper agent angle, which I'm sure God's Light or God's Eye is more than lethal enough, God's Eye going into it, that will have a death or two, if not a straight disappearance. But regardless, this was less lethal than I thought it was. So don't be surprised if your agents walk away, fully stocked and loaded. Now, that was less lethal because one of my agents cast domination on Thomas and then made him run in and kind of distract and fight these chimeras, which I rolled, 1d4, and I had him be 4 to see what target they would attack, with their frenzy ability, and they rolled it twice, and both times they attacked Thomas, and so horrific rolls on terms of my monsters, and purely, truly God-blessed rolls on my players in this one, so we walked away without any damage. But that doesn't really matter because this is just all about your agents graduating into teeth. Like, this is the sharpening moment. This is where they fully, prove themselves as vast warriors and taking down this thing. Because as far as I can tell from the reading, like this monster is brought about by Bast itself. These monsters just to help prove them. So really cool set piece moment. Definitely treat it cinematically. Make sure to emphasize when they go down into the swamp that it's tough to get back out, that they know they're kind of in that basin with the swamp and the pit. And should be pretty easy enough to find as they walk their way down the symbols and stuff like that. So really cool cinematic moment. Not nearly as lethal as I hoped it was. Not because I played it nice, but because they cast a lot of spells and that cost my agent tons of permanent power to cast these spells and everything too. So it was not free. And he's walking away with low sand. His teammates knowing he uses sorceries. Very weird, very creepy. He's starting to stink himself as the one that's using the sorceries, which will be a cool moment. So, but cool ending. And that's going to bring us a close to part 3. For one, it took us quite some time, probably about 6 sessions, and that was with some longer sessions on weekends as well to crank up some time. This is going to be where a lot of the meat of the investigation takes place, and all the leads found in part 2 are going to be followed up on. And don't be afraid if you're running the God's Hunt expansion book like I am to drip in information about the kids from that book into the main campaign. We're really excited to get into that book as well. But good luck. Good luck, handlers. You can do it. And if you haven't, subscribe, because watching that subscriber number go up is one of the only things that bring light in my life, of course. So if you're watching this video and you're liking my content and you want to see me make more Delta Green videos and other shit videos and whatever, feel free to drop some comments and hit some likes. And, I appreciate everyone taking their time out of their day to watch these videos and to listen to me ramble on. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.